Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our second session of the day. It is my honor to introduce a colleague of mine, Dr. Lisa Blue. Lisa is currently the STEM instructional specialist in the Faculty Center for Teaching and Learning at EKU. Lisa holds a bachelor's and a master's degree in chemistry from Missouri State University and a PhD in inorganic chemistry from the University of Kentucky. So after a brief engineering postdoc at Washington University in St. Louis, Lisa returned to Kentucky to work for the chemical startup company that funded her PhD research. 3 years later, Lisa returned to academia, where she taught large lecture courses, eventually becoming a senior lecturer. So Lisa is going to lead us today on the topic of constructive uses of AI, or the instructor. So it seems that AI has already permeated every aspect of what we do as educators. So it's time for us to find the ways to use it constructively to help free up our time, but also so that we can guide our students on appropriate usage. So Lisa, over to you.
Thank you so much, Brad, for the lovely introduction. So as Brad mentioned, AI is everywhere. These were the most popular AI tools as of last month. Now, I have no idea what most of these icons mean. I recognize this one up top here because that is ChatGPT, but for the rest of them, no, not so much. You can go out and openly search for these and use a lot of these tools, but we're also seeing AI show up in our learning management systems. In our last session, Jean mentioned that Blackboard Learn Ultra by Anthology is actually turning on an AI design assistant in September. I'm actually on a committee that is evaluating 3 different learning management systems, which we hope to adopt one of these 3 for Eastern Kentucky University. And while they didn't say a whole lot about how these AI design assistants were going to work, we did hear mention from Blackboard Learn Ultra, but also from Canvas by Instructor. Notice that these are emerging technologies. A lot of these are beta technologies. And so I'm anxiously awaiting our sandbox environment so I can see how these AI-powered supports are actually going to function within the LMSs. As if that wasn't bad enough, I found out that Microsoft 365 introduced a program called Copilot. This isn't something I've looked into a whole lot, but it was announced back in March 16th. It's advertised as a co-pilot for your work, combining the power of large language models with your data in the Microsoft Graph. So it seems like AI is everywhere. And so it may be time for us to stop and reflect and think about what are the best ways that we can use this constructively, maybe to free up a little bit of our bandwidth so that we can focus on helping our students cope with this emerging disruptive technology. So today I'd like to talk to you about how we can, as instructors, use these AIs as personal assistants and to help us author course descriptions and objectives, student learning outcomes, create new exercises and assessments, and then think about course, lesson, and module redesigns to better support our students with this technology in mind. So generative AI, I first started dabbling with it to try and offload some of the mundane tasks that didn't really need a PhD chemist to take care of them. So for example, what if I want my students to take a video of themselves on their phone to answer a question and then upload that video to YouTube? Do I really want to go through all the steps, or do I want to offload this instruction writing to a generative AI? Yeah, the latter. I've also used it to generate marketing messages and email templates for mass mailings. Not something I'm fond of doing, but sometimes we just have to do those tasks. So for example, we use a lot of learning assistants and peer leaders in the STEM Center for Excellence. And towards the end of the spring semester, I needed to advertise these positions, but did I feel like writing a catchy, marketing, exciting message to get students interested in this? Not so much. So I uploaded this to ChatGPT with minimal information. I said that I need to hire learning assistants for the STEM Center for Excellence at EKU. And literally that's about what I plugged in for the prompt. And this is what I got out as a result. Now, my student partners during the spring semester, I let them read it and they said, "Oh, Dr. Blue, you sound like a used car salesman," but I was okay with that. I didn't have to think about this. It came up with something that was reasonable. It was catching people's attention and it served the purpose. And so that freed up my bandwidth to think about other things. We can also use generative AI to do things such as summarizing meeting notes, which is really important if you want to keep track of what you have done to collaborate with other parties. And you want to be able to say, hey, during this meeting, we talked about X, Y, and Z, and our follow-up will consist of these next 3 steps. I've seen examples where instructors have tried writing emails to students, but then they stopped and said, well, wait a second, am I using the right tone? So you can actually take an email that you intend to send to a student and have these AI models modify the tone to be more appropriate for the situation at hand. My favorite prompt by far. I have these great ideas. I dump them into a document. Oh, but can we rewrite this for clarity? All right, so here's an example. So again, trying to solicit these learning assistants to work for the STEM Center for Excellence in the fall, I added this prompt, and by this point, I wasn't even using proper punctuation. I simply said, rewrite for clarity. And then the quotes start the message I had generated on my own. And the message is fairly long, so the quotes went off of the screen. But I said, hey, rewrite this for clarity. And I was really emphasizing that, hey, you're doing awesome in your computer science and information technology degree program. So as such, I would love for you to come to our student success seminar and function as a peer leader to mentor first year, first semester freshmen. So the AI took what I wrote and, oh, for crying out loud, it added a human element that I totally skipped over in my effort to just get the job done. The AI added, I hope this message finds you well. Oh my goodness, I'm outperformed by a computer. I'm kind of embarrassed, but it did it and it did it well. So bravo. Again, freeing up my bandwidth to think about other things. So we can also use these AIs, and I'm going to talk specifically about ChatGPT 3.5 because I am too cheap to spend money on ChatGPT 4.0. And I get really fussy when I have to learn new technologies and have to just learn a whole lot about them. My preference is to embrace technology and see how I can break it. For example, I discovered quite early that you can't ask ChatGPT 3.5 to rewrite for clarity and impact. It will give you an error message every time if you say for clarity and impact. I always want to be bold and get my point across, but it can't handle that. So when we're brainstorming instructional material with ChatGPT 3.5, the key things are to be specific. If you don't get the output that you want, feel free to iterate. I am a huge fan of the method of successive approximations. And then if you're still not thrilled with it, ask ChatGPT to improve its work. So for example, let's take on a task and let's write some learning objectives for a class. All right, as a chemist and as someone who loves working with first-year students, I wanted ChatGPT to write course objectives for college level general chemistry 1. So college level because I wanted the difficulty to be appropriate. I didn't want it to be high school level. And general chemistry 1 because I only wanted the first semester, not both semesters of general chemistry. What I got. Wow, look at that output. I know that's a ton, and I don't expect you to read through all of that. But I got quite a few bullet points here. And in quickly analyzing these bullet points, I can tell you that, well, ChatGPT isn't going to take my job anytime soon because I asked for the first semester. And what I got was Gen Chem 1, Gen Chem 2, things that are specific to both, things that are appropriate for the lab class, and even some intro to organic chemistry, which we usually don't have time to teach that in general chemistry. So while the output was useful, it does take that discerning instructor to say, yeah, let's cut this off at bullet point number 7. So I kept working with the same prompt. So I did not start a new prompt. And this prompt engineering is really the art you need to be able to become competent at to get good output. So I tried tweaking my prompt by saying, write course objectives for a first semester college level general chemistry approach. And then I was like, you know what? I'll feed a little more information. Try the atoms first approach. Didn't really change a whole lot. So I said, okay, well, maybe it's not familiar with atoms first. What if it tries the reactions first approach? Yeah, it didn't work too well either. So out of desperation, I thought about my favorite general chemistry book. And I said, okay, write course objectives for a first semester general chemistry course based on Macmillan's Interactive General Chemistry textbook. Yeah, not much changed with that third iteration either. And so again, it's a matter of thinking about what do I really want out of this, looking at the list of output and saying, no, I just need this part. So with that, we can take each of these student learning outcomes and we can take each of these course objectives and then we can split it down further into student learning outcomes. So notice again in the quotes, this is literally the prompt I put into ChatGPT. I said, write student learning outcomes for, and then in quotes, I took one of those course objectives. The results were these. By the end of this course on chemical bonding, so that's a little wonky, but it's okay. I know what I was asking for. And so it gave me these 12 student learning outcomes. And with those learning outcomes, I really liked that it added 9, 10, 11, and 12. Analyze real world applications. Oh yeah, why are we learning this? Let's connect it back to real life. Communication of concepts. It's vitally important that our majors are able to talk about their disciplines. Problem solving is critically important. Even if they never take another chemistry class in their life, they're going to learn these problem solving skills that will translate to any other course they take in college and to the career beyond. And of course, critical thinking and analysis is right up there with it. So I really loved what I saw in the green box. However, what I was not so fond of was learning outcome 2, analyze bonding properties. We really missed the boat here by only focusing on covalent, ionic, and metallic bonds because it didn't talk anything about bond polarity, which is what gives rise to so much of our chemical reactivity and physical properties. So I brought ChatGPT 3.5 to task and said, yeah, you can do better. So my specific prompt in green was to add learning outcomes covering specifically polar bonds, nonpolar bonds, polar molecules, and nonpolar molecules, because the learning outcomes were deficient. And ChatGPT said, certainly, I don't have a problem with this at all, and came back with several more student learning outcomes. Okay, this is fantastic. Now I feel like we have adequate coverage of the material. However, I am a big fan of student learning outcomes. When you're explicit with your student learning outcomes, it serves a multitude of purposes in these large lecture classes. When my team and I sat down and wrote student learning outcomes for every single topic in our General Chemistry 1 and General Chemistry 2 courses, and made sure that each one of those student learning outcomes started with an action verb from the appropriate level of Bloom's taxonomy, students never asked us again, will this be on the exam? They never asked us, do I need to know how to do fill in the blank? Those student learning outcomes that we published with the syllabus each semester was like an additional contract describing exactly to students how deeply we wanted to be them to be comfortable with the topic, and they knew exactly what to expect on the exam. It served another purpose in that with this large lecture course that was taught across multiple sections, It allowed us to have that uniformity. So students weren't constantly saying, "Oh, well, so-and-so's class is easier than Dr. Blue's class. She's kind of a jerk, she asks too much of us." No, we're all writing exam questions on the same topics at the same level of Bloom's. So this did allow us to team write these common hour exams for Gen Chem 1 and 2 much more efficiently. And students were never surprised on the exams. So to me, I think it's really important to take that additional time to fine-tune student learning outcomes. To do this in ChatGPT, though, we do have to add a little extra information. And so for the prompt here in bold, I've got write learning outcomes for. You would put in the topic or the student learning, or you would put in the topic and then say at the remembering level of Bloom's taxonomy. And so at the remembering level, we've got recall facts and basic concepts. And then I supplied an entire list of verbs there. All right, well, what if for the topic, I want them to do better than just remember? What if I want them to understand or apply or analyze or create? So you can repeat this exercise for each level of Bloom's taxonomy, and these verbs are readily available, easy to search online. And if you're not satisfied, you can ask ChatGPT to rerun the prompt. So once we've done this, we can talk about the learning outcomes course content, lesson plan, quiz questions, whatever to your heart's content. So I tried generating a quiz over this material. And my first attempt, I asked ChatGPT to create a 10-question quiz asking students to analyze the polarity of bonds, the electronic geometry, the molecular geometry, and the molecular polarity of different compounds. Now, I actually wanted all 4 pieces of information because that's the process you go through to determine molecular polarity for a single compound. So I wanted literally 10 compounds with 4 answers each. That first prompt didn't get it. There is a limit to how much information the free version of ChatGPT can spit out. And so I thought, well, maybe I'm asking for the sun, the moon, the stars. I'll back off a little bit and ask for less. So I attempted to pare this back and ask for a 5-question quiz, and it still didn't get the results that I wanted. So then I asked it specifically to create a quiz where students must analyze 5 molecules. And in so doing, identify the polarity of the bonds, the electronic geometry, the molecular geometry, and the polarity. And then just to emphasize once again, polarity of each molecule. Okay, I need all 4 pieces or this is a failed exercise. So when I did that and ChatGPT started spitting out this quiz, hey, this is a quiz over this. Here are the instructions. Here's molecule number 1. What type of bond is formed between carbon and hydrogen atoms? Okay, check. What is the electronic geometry? Another check. What is the molecular geometry? Okay, good. And finally, is the molecule polar or non-polar? This is exactly what I wanted, okay? And so it was good for molecule 1. It was good for molecule 2. And then as I scroll down to get the rest of the information, oh, ChatGPT, you just phoned in your performance. Daggone it. So again, I'm not feeling too worried about my job security at this point. Again, it could have been because ChatGPT can only allow so much output. It is very limited. And again, I'm too cheap to pay for ChatGPT 4. So yeah, that was an interesting thought experiment to see how far down the line I can get. So it does concern me though. What if I use AI to generate an assignment? What if my student then takes that assignment and feeds it back into a generative AI and completes the assignment that way? Well, what if I take that information back and use AI to grade the assignment? Oh, what have we just done? Okay, no, this is not the goal. We need to work on making sure that we humanize the process. And so we need to look carefully at those 3 arrows between the bubbles and think about what are we really going for? and how do we make sure that the student is contributing? All right, so I've talked to several individuals in K through 12 and higher ed, and I've asked them, I said, how are you coping with AI this fall? And several of them had the knee-jerk reaction. Hey, we're going back to all paper and pencil. Everything's happening in the classroom. No chance of using AI to phone in the performance. And I would urge you all to resist that urge, okay? If we go back to paper and pencil, to me, that feels like pandemic 2.0. It feels like we've thrown away a lot of work that we've generated in recent years to do better in the classroom. You also have to worry about equity issues. What about our students that learn differently? For example, if we have students that really need a low distraction environment to perform their best, and now we're telling them to come back to the classroom. What if we have a student that has a slow processing speed and really needs the time and space that homework would give them to produce their best work? What if we have students that need those electronic accommodations? What if we have a student who can't write with a pencil, and instead they need something that writes more smoothly, like an Apple Pencil on a tablet, or needs to be able to type because of a physical disability? We need to think carefully about those issues before we go back to the good old days. And so I would encourage you to think carefully about refining your assignments. The first thing to do is to run your assignments through AI to see how easily it provides an answer. When you get that answer, do the answers have the quality that you're hoping for? A lot of what I see with the generative AI responses is that the responses are very generic and very uninspiring. After you read so many of these Gen AI responses, you can spot it from a mile away. The OpenAI plagiarism detector was quietly pulled from the market after it said that the Declaration of Independence was AI generated. There was no fanfare about it. Just one day it was there. The next day you went back to the website and said content not available. So plagiarism detectors are not the answer. It's going to be up to us to look for the quality and to modify and retest until AI is no longer the easy solution. Maybe this means that we generate an assignment in parts, and so that students go through an iterative process themselves. For example, if they're writing a lab report, maybe they write one portion of the lab report, they get feedback, and then they have the opportunity to rewrite. I always want to make sure we're adding that human element to assignments. For example, if we ask students their opinion on a topic, Gen AI will come back and say, as an artificial intelligence, I do not have an opinion. And so that's a dead giveaway if students accidentally copy paste that into their discussion prompts. Another stopgap is to require literature sources that reside behind some sort of paywall or library database. And so if we say Google Scholar and Wikipedia is no longer sufficient, but you have to plug into EKU libraries and look for this particular database, that will also help. And then my favorite part of this is maybe we need to refine our assignment design with a focus on active learning. All right. I think the best thing we can do as instructors is to come to class excited for what we teach. That excitement is infectious. And students want to know why that crazy person in front of them is so interested in their topic that they can't stand still when they talk about it. That excitement and that enthusiasm really hooks students. We can also bring them into the process by having peer teachers in the class. We can engage in think, pair, share. We could go to a flipped classroom model. Lots of different options here to focus on that active learning and making sure that students are actively engaging with the content. So just as an example, and to build upon the work that I had already generated for this particular session, what if we turn this quiz into a classroom activity? All right, so I asked ChatGPT in that same line of prompts to turn this quiz into a classroom activity that can be engaging and effective for students. And so it came up with a title for the activity, it came up with an objective, and it listed all the materials needed. Now, this is not probably the best example because, hey, let's just give a quiz in class. Okay, well, no, let's make this interactive. And so we can have copies of the quiz for each student or group. We can have a whiteboard or projector for discussing answers. I think it's fantastic when students get up and draw molecules and argue about them. We can also have molecular model kits because we're talking about three-dimensional models here. And so it's important for students to be able to make those models, turn them over in their hands, and understand how they work three-dimensionally. And so the nice thing about this is that ChatGPT literally lists out step by step how you would do such a thing. And so it gives you an introduction and it says, hey, this could take about 10 minutes. Distribute the quiz. This takes about 5 minutes. And then it gives you options. You could have an individual or a group analysis. I think it's always best to let students work individually for a time because they need to engage with and wrestle with these questions. And then it's okay for them to come together in small groups to analyze the molecules and answer the quiz questions. And, again, argue about your answers. I love walking around student groups and saying, okay, you've got this answer and you've got this answer. I want you to convince the other person that you're right. And so encouraging students to discuss their reasoning and collaborating on finding the answers is important. That's where that deeper learning occurs. And so then, of course, you want to wrap that up with an interactive discussion, and the timing is going to vary depending on the size of the class, the number of difficulties encountered, but just asking students to engage in the discussion, ask questions. And I think when you have that time as an instructor to walk around the room and talk with them individually, it breaks down a lot of barriers. And so then it goes on to talk about hands-on visualizations, group presentations could be an option, and then wrap up and reflection. So again, you don't have to go through all of these steps, but it gives you lots of ideas for how you want to individualize this presentation or this exercise assignment in your own class. All right, and at the end, it talks about how can we assess performance on this activity? What are the benefits? Anytime we can get active engagement, collaboration, and visual learning, and then bring it back to the real world applications. Why is this important? If you could throw in a few molecules, water is an obvious one. If we could talk about why water has bond polarity and why does that make water weird among all the other hydride compounds in its group, that's an excellent way to wrap up a lesson. Now, as a final bonus, suppose that not only are you worried about teaching material in the STEM disciplines, but what if you're also instructing future healthcare professionals? It's really important for them to be able to get their hands on some clinical data and analyze that data. Patient X has these blood sugar readings throughout the day. Does anything need to be done to adjust their glucose levels? All right, so we can actually create data sets in ChatGPT, and right now they don't export to an Excel file, but they do present in a way that's easy to copy and paste to an Excel file. But we can create these data sets without creating privacy concerns. So there's a lot of potential here. If you're looking for that extra collaboration or just that external brain for, man, I don't know, I need this information, this will be helpful to students, but it's the end of a very long day and I just don't think I can produce another data set. So a lot of articles talk about combating AI, and Brad and I, of course, picked up on the same image here. But anytime people talk about combating AI or fighting AI instead of embracing AI, I automatically get the Terminator music in my head. And we do need to talk to our students about why are we doing this particular assignment? Students will take shortcuts on completing the work when they don't see the value in the assignment, or if they don't allow enough time to complete the assignment. So if we consistently communicate to them, this is why you want to complete this work. Everything we do with the rest of the semester will build on this. It's really important to understand these concepts. That's the first piece. The second piece is to explain when, where, and how you think AI assistance is appropriate. It's okay to brainstorm with AI to come up with ideas for an outline for a paper, but then write the paper yourself. Find the sources yourself. It's okay to type into the AI, I don't understand how to calculate bond polarity. Can you explain it on a college student level? Can you explain it more simply? Okay, so it's okay to use it to break down concepts that you're struggling with. And then I think it's important for us as instructors to be open about how we use or do not use AI tools. I use AI tools, again, for the mundane task. If I'm trying to refresh a course or build new content in a course, I'm just not quite sure where to go with it, then I will look to the AI for inspiration, but ultimately the words will be my own because I don't want to come off like that used car salesman, or I want to make sure that the content is appropriate. I want to make sure that the difficulty is in the right spot for Bloom's taxonomy, according to what I need my students to be successful at the end of the day. And so with that, that is all the material I had prepared for today. I'd be happy to take your questions at this time. Let's see, lots going on in the chat. Okay, so Heather, yes, I agree that students will need to know how to find, use, and evaluate sources in the real world for lifetime information literacy. My librarians are some of my favorite people, and I couldn't do what I do without the support of my librarians. So yes, I agree completely. Let's see. And let's see, students will use AI to shortcut finding, using, and evaluating resources and just use text that AI produces. Scotty, I agree with you. That is a fear of mine as well. And we need to really show students, well, first of all, we need to explain to students, what is AI doing? It is a text predictor. It is literally a calculator for words at this point. It says, okay, using these tokenized words that was in the prompt, predict what word comes next. Well, here's a word, here's another word, here's another word. And then we need to get students in the habit of looking at that predicted text and saying, does this answer the question appropriately? Because a lot of times the generative AI won't really answer the question. Sometimes it just kind of misses the mark. And so we need to train students how to use the text that AI produces and critique it. Is this answering the question? Is it not answering the question? How can we improve upon it? Let's see. Yes, Lisa Jones, I had the idea of creating data sets with patient info with you specifically in mind. Love your program over there. And Heather, again, just a plug here, if you want to talk to your librarian about assignment design for information literacy and research assignments, we do offer assignment design consultations. I would encourage everyone to reach out to their librarians. They are our first line of defense. Let's see, Seth says, NIDA has freely available real data sets. Thank you for that. Let's see, we do have a PLC coming up this fall where librarians will continue the conversation that we've started here today. I'm really excited for that learning community. Let's see. And Rusty has put in a link to register for the PLC. Thank you, Rusty, for that. Let's see, Mercy, oh, I love it. My mind is reeling with possibilities, some apocalyptic, some delightful. Yes, let's keep talking. I feel the same. Let's see. I just put in there to create a sample laboratory report with CBC and CMP for a patient with end-stage renal disease and GI bleed. Got a great output of sample lab results. Lisa, look at you rocking it already. Fantastic. Let's see, Michael plans to use this article in my class to show the hazards of not understanding your own work. I'm going to read that. Thank you so much for sharing that, Michael. All right, let's see. Sean asked, how can students use AI in appropriate ways when writing research papers? Sean, that is an excellent question. I think we need to answer that for ourselves first so that we can talk to our students about where is this useful and where should we not rely on the AI so much. I think it's useful for generating an outline if students are stuck and they just don't know where to go with it. I think it's also really useful if students are not finding the tools in Microsoft Word to be good enough, such as like Grammarly. If they really want something to help them improve their writing style, it's okay to put bits of their text into the AI, analyze the results, but then not copy it verbatim. Take what sounds like their voice and bring that back to the assignment. We have to be very careful not to lose our voice in these assignments. And so I think, again, making a scaffolded writing report where we talk about, hey, this is an appropriate spot to use the AI, and this is how you should limit its scope. And these are the reasons why. These are the conversations we need to have when introducing an assignment. So Sean, a lot to unpack there, but I hope this gave you some good ideas. And Brad talks about the flipped classroom approach can help with this. Having students present findings and hold presentation on topics can be an effective way of getting them involved with information they are interacting with. John, thank you for the kudos. Let's see. Brad, when your AI assistant is the only one who understands. There was a comment earlier about, hey, it feels so wonderful to be able to bounce ideas off a colleague. Oh, but it happens to be the AI. I appreciate having that non-judgmental entity out there to help me improve my writing. What other questions do you have? I think I've covered everything in the chat. The image of Betty Crocker was a compilation of images of the modern American woman using human brains to construct the image. Can't wait to see what AI would come up with for advertising images of users of Apple, Coke, etc. John, oh my gosh, yes. So Brad mentioned earlier about we have to be really careful because the data that the AIs have been pre-trained on come complete with biases, racism, stereotypes. If you ask any of the AI image generators to give you images of an engineer, they're going to give you a white male, sometimes with glasses, sometimes with the bonus of a pocket protector. And is that really appropriate? Okay, and so that's something we need to talk to our students about. What biases are present that we should be aware of? What groups is this marginalizing? Is this taking the appropriate view? Okay, and keep in mind also, ChatGPT in particular, its access to the internet was cut in September of 2021. And so I was speaking to an instructor in aviation, and he was talking about how students were trying to use the AI to answer questions, but there were recent aviation guidelines that were addendums and overrides of some of the old policies, and the students were totally missing it because the AI wasn't aware of it. So students need to be aware of the data set that it was trained on, and it's got all those human biases and issues with it. And so we need to tread lightly with that output and make sure we aren't perpetuating that. Let's see. Brad mentioned in the previous session that at Georgia State University, younger students were engaging with an AI chatbot, and they felt more comfortable engaging with that AI chatbot because they weren't concerned about, somebody else thinking poorly of them because they had these questions. A lot of times students have that fear of asking questions because they don't want to seem like, well, I don't know anything. Well, everybody else knows the answer. Well, I don't want to appear dumb, And so those AI chatbots are actually a fantastic idea. What other questions or concerns do people have? I think I've Let's see, John mentions, I've seen AI images of a typical person from each state, very stereotypical. Yes, I've seen those as well. And so, yeah, if you want the AI to generate different images, so going back to my engineer example, you have to say, show me a Black female engineer to get some variety, for example. Other questions, comments, concerns? All right. Well, we do have about 4 minutes left in this session. I will go ahead and stop sharing my screen here.